face. I've been doing permanent makeup since 1993. I was lucky enough to do an apprenticeship with G.J. Normand, who trained under Mary Jane Hockey, and love what I do. So I specialize in scars and areolas, but I do obviously the traditional cosmetic procedures, eyeliner, brows, and lips. Really like how artistic I can be, more so with the scars and the areolas. It gives me a lot more creativity. So since I work in the plastic surgery field, I get a lot of areola scars, tummy tuck scars. I'm starting to also see a lot of gynecomastia scars from men. So a lot of times it was a weight issue, so they have a scar underneath and then they have a scar around the areola. So I'm starting to see that a lot more now. I also do some work on some cutting scars. Unfortunately, from people, that did have some issues way back. I've got one guy I'm working on right now that is trying to get into the Navy, so he needs to have those covered before he can be admitted. So these kind of things are pretty rewarding. Through the years, I have been following people that go beyond what I've learned with their trends, in particular single needle trends. Like Angie Kwiatkowski, I went and took a training with her, and most people are like, "You've been doing this so long, why do you want to go train?" I'm like, it's always something to learn, but I actually had to see how that worked because it's not something I was ever trained in doing. So I do appreciate her. I want to go see Elaine Campaign over in, I hope I said that right, over in England. I think her work is fabulous. And so I usually try to pick at least one person a year that I sort of admire and want to learn a little bit of something new, and I'll go and train with them. So that's sort of my new thing now, the newer techniques that I've been sort of, I wouldn't say against, but I've been leery of trying to bring into my practice. So when I started in the early 90s, permanent makeup was pretty new, and we could not get supplies from anybody but Spalding and Rogers. They're still even in business, I'm not sure. Nobody wanted to sell to us because we didn't have any training, and they thought we were renegades, and we probably were to them, and we probably were. So they're used to apprenticeships, and so we would literally get our pigments in powder form, and we would mix them in blenders with distilled water, glycerin, alcohol, whatnot. We were able to get the traditional Puma machine and needles, but we really had a hard time getting pigment until somebody actually got into the pigment industry for permanent makeup, and I would say that was probably Elizabeth Finch with Dermacolor. So, of course, Mary Jane trained who I trained with, and who also trained my mom. So, of course, we knew about her from the very beginning. And she also changed the world as far as anesthetics go. Just a brilliant mind. I've always had the utmost respect for her and her integrity. She's always got great products out there she's bringing to market. I've taken a couple of classes with her, and she's just got so much knowledge and so much information, and she was one of the pioneers as far as I'm concerned. A lot of us have a career because of her and Patty Catlett. So I was really, really skeptical when carbon started coming out in our field, because carbon in the wrong hands can be a disaster. But one thing I have come to realize is it is wonderful for covering up old work, old faded work. So as with anything used properly, it's been a game changer for more vibrant techniques that some people want. Also, aftercare. I think anesthetics we've done pretty well with. There's only so far we can go with anesthetics. I love the after ink line for brows. And as far as anything else, I would love to see somebody come out with a good sunblock. So that's one of those things that we're constantly searching for something that people can protect their investment with. One of the things that I love is that I was lucky enough to get to know some people in this field that, you know, put us where we are today. One being Patty Pavlik, who's no longer with us. But she was the most humble person. She lived out on a reservation, basically, and she raised lynx cats. And I think her tattooing just did enough to feed those cats and take care of all that. And she had a pigment line. And it was so funny, she never took credit cards. She just took your word of mouth, and she would mail your stuff out, and you would literally just turn around and write her a check. And I would always ask her, like, what happens if somebody screws you over? And she would just say, you know, they do, they don't, most people don't. But she was so humble. And then, of course, I loved learning things from Mary Jane, because Mary Jane is just so smart. I remember going to Amsterdam with her and learning all these things that I just never thought of. I thought she was just a tattooer that had gotten into PMU, but she was so much more than that, and just really sort of developed the industry into making things so much easier for us today. So probably a year after I finished my apprenticeship, I went to my first SPCP meeting, and it was out in California. And I got to meet all kinds of people, but I was so green, you know, behind the ears. This would have been probably in '94. And I remember seeing ladies, and a lot of times these were people's careers much later in life, maybe their second or third career. So they were all like my age now. We didn't have a lot of young people like we do now back then. So I wound up sort of attaching myself to Margie Grimm, and she took me under her wing. And I'll never forget, she took me to dinner, and she whipped out a $100 bill and paid for dinner, and I was so enamored. And she's still a very decent, dear friend of mine, and she has made leadways above and beyond that I could ever think. But the fact that I have her on speed dial, and I've been able to make and help with laws and try to make this a better field for everybody, is when I knew that I had a community of people. My best friends are all colleagues. Pretty much that has been my life for the past 27 years. And so those are my best friends. They've been with me through weddings and divorces and children's and graduations. You know, it's my life. And that's, you know, when you know that when you leave those people after you've been with them at a conference and you feel remorse and you're sort of sad, then you know that